I remember one time they let a pig loose of a neighbor, and we spent the morning chasing this pig. We got the kids in both minivans chasing these little piglets all. So there were some interesting mornings, but.
And in some ways, that is the real joy and glory of homeschooling, those unexpected little adventures that you remember, forever. You might not remember what your math lesson was that day, but you remember everybody being out checking the pigs. Hi, you're listening to the Zan Tyler Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Zan Tyler Podcast, where our goal is to help you thrive in your homeschooling journey. Today, we are actually recording from the Alliance Conference in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm here with my new friend, Callie. So, Callie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Zan.
So, Callie, tell me what brought you to the Alliance. What are you doing in the homeschooling community now?
Well, I have recently taken a job with a state advocacy group called HEAV, Home Educators Association of Virginia, and I'm their Director of Government Affairs.
Well, one of my dear friends, Yvonne Bunn, had that position for many, many years. So I know she is happy to have you step up.
Well, it is a huge honor. Yvonne has been with HEAV for 35 years, so they're big shoes to fill. In fact, I initially hesitated off and said, I can't do this, and then but she has really been wonderful with empowering me.
Yeah, that is great. So I want to come back to your job and what you're doing and what prepared you for that. But first, tell us a little bit about your homeschooling journey, how you started homeschooling and how many children you have.
Okay. Well, let's see. I before I ever had children or was married, I worked for a local Virginia state delegate, and he would frequently he really loved homeschoolers and the homeschool community, and he would tell people, you need to homeschool and have a big family, and told me the same thing, and I heard it for so many years and worked a lot in homeschool policy. So when I got married, started having babies, and then the time for school got closer and closer and closer and scarier and scarier and scarier. And as much as I believed in homeschooling, I didn't believe in myself to be able to do it.
Oh, that's a good way to put it, because we hear all the great things about homeschooling, but you're always worried, am I going to bless my kids or ruin my kids? I mean, it's always that lurking thought in our minds.
It is. It's and I bought into the lies about socialization. I had a son who's a little shy. He wanted to go to the story time at the library, but sit in my lap and not. And so I thought it was scary. But I just thought, well, in Virginia, the line of compulsory attendance is very blurred at kindergarten. I thought, he's already reading. How bad can I mess up? If it's a total disaster, we'll just send him to first grade. That's right. But I was scared to send him to school, too. Mm-hmm. I was scared for his heart and his soul. And my husband was also hesitant. But we kind of struck a deal. We'll try 1 year. And almost immediately, we just loved it.
You found your rhythm and fell in love with it.
Off to the races.
So how many children do you have now?
I have four boys.
Okay, and what are their ages?
So now they are 19, 17, 15, and 12.
I know that Michelle Staton is one of your dear friends. And one of the things I want us to talk about today is moms helping moms, because I know she was hesitant to homeschool. Michelle was a guest on the podcast, and her dad was a senator in the Virginia Senate. And so she had a lot of the same experiences politically, I'm guessing, that you did, and same exposure. So is that how y'all got to know each other?
It is, indeed. And yes, she is my best friend, my sister from another mother, we like to say. And that is how we got to know each other, is working in her dad's office. I think I was 19, maybe 20 when I started working for her dad. And so over time, and she was really the brains and the strategy behind the campaign operation. She's just so good at understanding people and narratives, and I love the policy and the details. And so our friendship just kindled slowly. And then we both ended up marrying, friends. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so we ended up having babies kind of year over year. We would actually had a whole maternity wardrobe that we would swap back and forth because we were pregnant every other year. We'd be like, okay, it's your turn. Okay, it's your turn. And had all these boys. And so just really kind of knitted together very closely during those years. And I started homeschooling from the get-go, and she and her husband sent their kids to school, and they were having a good experience. At that time, Loudoun County had a very good reputation. I think it was one summer in particular, she participated in a homeschool camp with us and just really saw her kids fly and flourish. And she didn't think she could do it. She didn't, I think until you live it, you don't realize.
Yeah, that's right. And I think so often that homeschooling from the outside looking in is much harder than actually homeschooling. So tell us how you helped her take the jump into homeschooling.
Okay. So at that point, she wanted to do it, but she didn't know how. So we kind of devised a little bit of a plan because we had to sell her husband on it. And so we had another, mutual friend of ours who homeschooled over for dinner and had her husband, Michelle and her husband over for dinner. And this was my first year as a single mom. So I was navigating the waters of figuring out how I was going to, be able to still homeschool because I was willing to sacrifice anything. At this point, I realized the value. And so we had her husband over and we kind of planned ahead of time, us moms, like, okay, you'll make this point. I'll make this. It's like the Parent Trap, but
he didn't stand a chance.
No, poor guy. And he kind of gave us a probationary period. And we kind of had this plan where that first year, I said, I would homeschool her kids and my kids. And I said, okay, well, you got to do the things we do. And so she was on board. So we had kids grades 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that year. And so she came to my house Monday through Friday. They drive out to my house every morning. I'm about 30 minutes out in the country for her every morning. And then she was like the mom and the wife, right? She was making all the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. She was driving the people if they needed to go somewhere. She was putting, Band-Aids on people's knees. And I was doing all the
teaching.
Yes. Yeah. And it was beautiful.
That is so amazing. So how long did that last?
We did that for one school year. So then that next year, she felt like, okay, I can do this.
Yes. Yeah. After having watched you with all the children. That is such an amazing story. I mean, what a glorious friendship to begin with. But then to help each other that way, I would have given my eye teeth to be able to, when we started homeschooling, to be able to sit in on somebody else's homeschool. But I didn't know anybody else in the world who was homeschooling. So this just sounds like, kind of like a little slice of heaven because y'all were there for each other. You could teach her the ropes and help her get comfortable with it. So that's really remarkable. So after that first year was over and you each had your own groups, did you see her much after that, or did your kids get together a lot?
So the Lord had plans for that ahead of time because that was a concern of ours. So that year we were kind of in groups. Like I think she was in Leesburg and I was out in Frederick, Maryland or something. But then we were both able to converge on Percival, that group. There was just a shift in where we needed to be and what fit best. And so we ended up being able to be in community together.
Oh, that is so great. So how did your children like having another family involved in their homeschool every day? Was it a challenge? Was it great for them? Was it?
That is a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. And it's interesting. They did not feel encroached upon. And that must have been a grace that I'm, just now aware of, because that is something that they would, they are they're very close with the Staten boys, all of them. But we obviously, when you have 6 kids who are school age, you're going to have stuff.
That's right.
Rough and tumble play. Oh my goodness. I remember one time they let a pig loose of a neighbor and we spent the morning chasing this pig. We got the kids in both minivans chasing these little piglets all. So there were some interesting mornings, but
And in some ways, that is the real joy and glory of homeschooling, those unexpected little adventures that you remember, forever. You might not remember what your math lesson was that day, but you remember everybody being out checking the pigs and catching the pigs.
So many good memories. I mean, we just look back at the pictures that pop up as memories and just, they made these little like Magna Cartas and they wrote each kind of their own. And it was so funny to see what their dictates upon us being parents were. And it was a great year.
Right. So then how long were y'all involved in the same community group together, or has that just been a constant since you've been homeschooling?
At least another 2 or 3 years, I would say. I honestly can't remember for sure. One of the great things that happened for her, it happens for all homeschool moms, I think, eventually, is they get their rhythm.
Yes.
And, you can ask somebody, I don't know how to homeschool. How do you homeschool? But sometimes they give you this answer. Well, I can't tell you how to homeschool. You have to do it yourself. But that can be even more intimidating.
Yes, that's right, because you're looking for a formula.
Right.
I just can remember I read a book on homeschooling by Dr. Moore, and I actually had a chance to talk to him several times on the phone and his wife. But I kept thinking, this is all great, and I love the theory behind it, but what am I supposed to do on Monday morning? The day we start school. I must have asked that question 1,000 times, but what am I supposed to do on Monday morning? And so you provided that answer for her. And this is one of the best stories I've ever heard because it shows the 2024 word of the year is community.
Oh, is it really?
Mm-hmm. And so it does show the power, and a community doesn't have to be huge.
No.
It can just be two friends and their families getting together. But in a way, I mean, you didn't rescue that family, but you came to their aid and you modeled it for them. And I think that is an amazing story. So let's switch gears a little bit and tell me what it's like being a single mom homeschooling.
Well, it's funny you should ask that next because I feel like Michelle came to my aid. I feel like I don't know if I would have had the fortitude or the energy and having that extra motivation of my best friend and just wanting her to succeed and wanting this to work for her family, I think was that spark that I needed to know that I too could continue homeschooling.
And that you had a purpose. I mean, not your own children are purpose enough, but sometimes we do need that little nudge to get us out of bed in the morning and keep us going.
Amen. So that helped me figure out that I can do this. And it's hard, but I'm also going to need community.
Yes.
I'm going to need other moms there filling in where I can and other dads too, because I'm raising 4 boys.
Yes.
And so I can't teach them how to man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
So it helped me realize, okay, I'm going to need to surround myself in community. And one of the things I did is I started teaching a lot more co-op classes. So that was one of the things that came in as I continued to tutor with CC, but then another co-op that we're involved in, and I helped with formation a little bit, where I could teach IEW classes, which was a program that, I'd already taught for years and I loved, but at this other place, I had unilateral decision-making over the syllabus and which book we used, and it allowed me a lot of freedom. And then my kids could take additional classes while I'm teaching. So we're still a family unit at one place, one time. And we did have a morning where, we'd have to go early and set up tables and get things ready for my class. And I had some grumbling from the boys. They wanted to go down and shoot hoops with their buddies and didn't understand why, and I said, look, guys, I can either put you in school and I can go get a full-time job, or we can do this together.
Right.
And
Right.
they never again, they were always just hard workers, all in, setting up the tables, getting things going, and just, I think themselves treasured what we had.
So one of my best friends was also a single mom, her of 4 boys, and they're grown now. But I just, we lived that life. I mean, we were in separate locations, but we still worked together. We were both editors on some projects together, and so it was just amazing to see how the Lord provided for Mary Jo and the boys. Her father stepped up. The men in their church stepped up. But Mary Jo, I mean, you're still the one at night
Yes.
doing it. I mean, at the end of the day, you're the
Yes.
one that's there. And so, I have a special place in my heart for single homeschool moms and single homeschool dads, because it's hard enough when you have the two of you doing it together. Joe used to travel a lot, and he'd be gone Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday. Still not the same thing, because I knew he was coming home.
Yes.
But it is that feeling of the cavalry never comes in at 6 o'clock.
That's right.
That's
right.
To relieve you just a little bit.
Yes.
So did you have, I mean, you just had the fortitude. Did you have special Bible verses? How do you, especially that first year, just because I know there are other moms out there going through this, how did you cope?
That's a great question. So I had a couple things. So when the kids were little and would watch Veggie Tales, they would have this verse over and over, Romans 8:28, in all things God works for the good of those who love him, those called according to his purpose. And I loved it. And, it just sunk in my heart. But it wasn't until these times of trial and struggling that I really grasped that all things part.
Yes. True. Yes.
And then it kind of started to tumble around more in my mind. But God granted me a couple very specific consolations, I would say. Like, I remember one time I was driving, and not audibly, but clearly the Lord spoke to me. And he said that if you stick with me through this trial, you have no idea of the beauty I have set out for you. And I needed that at that moment.
Yes.
I needed that. And I knew that promise of his, but I needed to hear it in that special way. So I would say just those, reminders.
Elizabeth Elliot wrote a book called These Strange Ashes. And she talks about that verse from Isaiah that says he gives us beauty for ashes. And that is, just what a glorious promise.
Well, I am a huge Elizabeth Elliot fan, because she speaks so eloquently about kind of like uniting our suffering to the Lord's and making good of those moments, that choice we make. The other thing the Lord gave me is we actually started keeping a list called Manna from Heaven. So there was a time when I was painting a friend's house, and she was talking about how good the berries were that summer, and asked if I'd had any. And I said, no, I hadn't. But in my head, I was thinking, we can't afford berries right now. We're eating apples and oranges when we're lucky. They get a lot more apples and oranges.
That's right.
And would you believe I went home, and that very day I got a Facebook message from somebody I tangentially knew who said, my blueberry bushes are prolific. Can you please bring your boys in as many containers and take all the blueberries you can carry? If it doesn't get more clear.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the sweet little things that nobody else sees that that's the Lord encouraging you. And he's going to take care of you and keep
provide.
On going. Yes.
Like you said with your friend. Yeah. And so that very night we started a list, and I called it Manna from Heaven, because we just have to trust, and he will feed us. And we started keeping that list, and it became pages and pages, over the years, of just these moments where nobody could have done this.
Right, but God. Mm-hmm. Do you still have that list?
We do. We do. And there have been times where we have fallen off keeping it. And then we realize when something happens, oh, we need to get back on that.
Yeah, because that's precious. And those will be really special things for them to read when they have children of their own.
Oh, I hadn't thought.
Because that's where I am now with kids and grandkids, and some of the things we share together as grandkids about, just their dad's life growing up or their mom's life growing up, then those things are really special. So do you have what would be the advice you have for single moms out there? What would you tell them?
I think a couple things. Your children are worth fighting for, to the point of you don't think you can make an exhaustion, and you have to let your friends carry you when you're just that exhausted. And that takes this surrendering that you don't, want to do. I fought, many years, and I was willing to spend every penny at my disposal to protect my ability to homeschool and my ability for the boys to attend church. Because if you leave that to the courts, the other party can do Wiccan seances on their time. The courts do not care about the religious formation of children. It took years and it was exhausting, but those bits, those manna from heaven just kept falling, and people like, Michelle and many other, moms and friends in my life were just always there, always encouraging, would bring me into the fold. Like when the boys were off at their dads, at first that was so hard to be alone. Yes. And they, friends would invite me over for a game night or what have you, and to take them up on those things.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk for just a minute about the work you're doing with HEAV now and what that entails.
A lot. Yvonne Bunn is just a giant and a legend, and has really built, and Ann Miller. I mean, the two of them together have just...
Yeah, they're a power duo.
Oh, my word. And, it's iron sharpening iron. So as I've come in, we did a very slow transition where, month over month, I picked up a day. So I help with informing what state laws we should support and which ones we should oppose to protect homeschoolers.
Bills that are currently in the legislature.
Correct. Yeah, okay. Or will be preparing bills to be in the legislature.
Okay.
Yeah, what types of changes to the law might happen in Virginia, because the price of freedom is eternal vigilance.
That's exactly right.
Never safe.
And freedom is not free.
No.
That's right.
So, and then we also work monitoring all of the local. We have 131 school divisions in Virginia. And so in Virginia, the local school divisions are the ones who are they administer the law.
Okay.
So it's
are they like school districts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. School districts, the superintendents.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where you file or, your notice of intent that you're going to homeschool. So we deal with them with all of the different interpretations and practices of the law. So we deal with the local school boards to some extent. That's where religious exemption goes through.
Okay. So explain what several states have religious exemption, but tell the homeschooling moms and dads listening what that means in Virginia.
Okay. Yeah, Virginia is actually unique the way our religious exemption works. So in Virginia, homeschooling is under the compulsory attendance law. So there's compulsory attendance in Virginia. There's various ways you can comply with compulsory attendance, public school, private school, homeschooling, and some other options. But you can also notify the school board that your religious convictions exempt you completely from any compulsory attendance in Virginia. If you
sign the religious exemption, you have no further correspondence with your school board.
That's how the law is written.
Okay. Is that how most homeschoolers in Virginia homeschool?
No, it's actually a minority.
Okay.
It's probably less than 10% of homeschoolers, of the homeschoolers we have in Virginia.
Okay.
This year we have on record around 60,000 homeschoolers in Virginia.
Okay.
My recollection is around 6,000 of them.
Okay, use the religious exemption.
Yeah.
And so then the rest are going through their local school district.
Correct.
And what are there standard regulations across the board as to what they have to report to their school districts? Or?
Yes, and that's one of the areas legislatively that we'll be working. So the way it kind of works is you file a notice of intent, and it's a notice, not a permission slip.
Right. Big difference. There's a
Big
huge difference.
And that's an area we're working with the, the different superintendents'
Yes.
offices.
Yes.
So we notify them, and there are these 4 criteria that you need to select one of the 4, as your ability to homeschool. And then you have to do that by August 15th.
Now, when you say 4 criteria, what does that mean?
So under the notice of intent law, you can say, I either have, a high school diploma.
Okay. So your credentials as a parent, basically.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I'm their parent is not enough of a reason.
Okay.
You need to say, I'm their parent and I have a teaching license, and I'm using a correspondence program, or, one of these 4 criteria, which just makes everything really confusing.
And complicated,
Complicated, confusing. In fact, some of the districts call it an unfunded mandate because they're having to decipher.
Yes, and it gives the school district a little bit of leeway if they want to be heavy-handed and require things more than the law really requires.
You got it.
Okay, guys out there, that's called you give government what is their due, but you don't give more than is required. And that's a really important, is you're not being contrary, but that's an important part of self-government in a country where we are the people. I mean, we the people are the government and not the bureaucrats.
That's right.
And so you want to be respectful, but you also want to stand your ground on things like that.
That's right. And these are our children. God entrusted these children to us. It's our job to protect them, not the government's job,
That's right.
And so that is one of the legislative initiatives we'd like to work on, is just simplifying and modernizing that law, and just saying, I am the parent. When the law first was written, it was 40 years ago, when it seemed like this big test of homeschooling. It was uncharted, and it seemed like scary territory.
Yes.
We know now. We're in 2nd and 3rd generation homeschoolers.
That's right. And we know that homeschoolers are doing great.
They are.
And they outscore their counterparts in institutions on standardized testing, all those things.
That's right. In fact, we even commissioned a study. Our organization paid for and commissioned a study. And in general, whether notice of intent or religious exemption, homeschoolers were anywhere between the 80th and 84th percentile on nationally normed standardized tests, whereas their public
school is the 50th percent.
You got it.
So you're scoring over 30 percentile points higher.
That's right.
So we're doing quite well as a community academically. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. And they're seeing it. So now the other part of the homeschool law is after the end of the school year, August 1st, the following year, you need to submit what's called proof of progress. And it can be a test, it can be an assessment by an education professional, something along those lines, to show academic, proficiency.
Progress or something. Okay, very interesting. So what will you spend in this capacity? What will you spend most of your days doing? Will you be down at the legislature? Will you be researching bills? Or is it just a combination of all of those things?
It's a combination. We do have a lobbyist, who's down there every day, that type of thing. So right now...
that's nice. So you don't have to do that on top of everything else. Okay, that's great.
It would be fun. I love being that.
Yeah, I know. It is. I enjoyed my years as a homeschool lobbyist very, very much.
Did you get to do that?
Yes, I did for many, many years.
Oh, it's exciting.
So, yes.
So, I mean, right now, a lot of preparation is going in. We're also, the microschool movement is really big, and it's very undefined. And so
tell us, just for those listening or watching, what a microschool is, although it's hard to define, like you say.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say is, a microschool is a school that somebody calls themselves a microschool. Okay. What that looks like, it varies a lot. But what we have found is most of them in Virginia are actually what you and I might call a homeschool co-op.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's probably this next generation of homeschoolers, just like we at the beginning felt scared of homeschooling. Mm-hmm. The term homeschooling seems a little scary, but the term microschooling
is, you're doing it in conjunction with with different people, so you're not alone.
Yeah, I think it seems more approachable.
Yeah, that's true.
But they are utilizing, most of them, the homeschool
School law.
laws. And so that's
Interesting.
where we come in.
And make sure everything's right. So what are you looking forward to in this job? And what caused you to apply for this? And is it just your years of experience?
I worked in the General Assembly, so I've seen that side of things. And then I went to the How to Begin Homeschooling at HEAB convention when I didn't think I could do it. I sat through Yvonne Bunn teach, kind of went to convention as a mama. And I applied for it because I think they initially had gone to Dick or Michelle, and then they had said, "Oh, you need to talk to Callie."
Okay, yeah, this is Dick or Michelle Staten.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Yes, okay.
Yeah, Senator Black or Michelle Staten, and they said, "Oh, you need to talk to Callie."
If you had any advice as we close, I guess I'd like to ask you two questions. Is there a special verse that we've already talked about, Romans 8:28? Are there any other verses that kept you grounded as a homeschool mom? And what advice would you give to homeschool moms this year?
The other verse that I relied upon was Isaiah 41:10.
Which is my favorite life verse, too. That's so amazing. This is first time in all my podcasting somebody shared that verse with me.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so this is a sweet moment for me.
Oh, that makes it special. Oh, thank you. So Isaiah 41:10, which is, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. There was another time at church that our pastor had said, the Bible says, do not fear 365 times, one for every day of the year.
Amazing. That is amazing.
But there were so many times I was scared. And I think there's so many times you're scared as a homeschool mom too. So I think that would be the other bit of advice, is that the Lord doesn't operate in fear. He operates in trust. And there's lots of fears to be had about what will happen to your kids, and then we have our own vain fears. Will I be successful as a homeschool mom? And really, we just need to do our part, keep going back and apologizing when we do wrong, ask for energy when we need it, and reset and redo.
That's right. So what advice would you give to homeschool mamas out there?
I think the advice I would give is find your people and lock arms with them. You need people to lean on. You are not meant to do this alone. These are your children, but you need other people breathing and speaking life into you. And you need to help pick up other people to remind yourself of the blessings you have yourself.
So once somebody has poured into you, then it's your turn to pour into others. Yeah, I like that. And that's really a story of what you and Michelle did for each other at different points in your life.
It is. And, it feels so good when you can be the one to be able to give, to help, it feels so good to be in that position when you can.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Callie. When I heard your story about the way you and Michelle, the way you helped Michelle, and then the way Michelle supported you, I thought, oh, we need to talk about this, because if there's anything I would encourage, those of you who are watching or listening today, it is to find your people. You don't have to do this alone. And I did it alone. And I will say, especially for an extrovert, it's not optimal. It's what the Lord had for me at the time, but it sure is nice now that there's plenty of people to be in community with as you homeschool, whether it's once a week or daily or whatever it is for you. So thank you so much, Callie, for being with us. It's been a real blessing. If people want to find you, how can they do that? How can they reach out to you in your capacity at HEAV?
Well, I guess they can go to our site. Our website is heav.org.
Okay.
My email address is cchaplow, CHAPLOW @heav.org.
Okay.
So there's that. Yeah.
Well, thank y'all for being with us so much today. We appreciate your time, and we hope this has been a blessing to you. You can find me at zantyler.com and on social media. And so I pray that God continues to bless you in your homeschool, and that we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.